Hi, students. Today we're going to talk about how to detect fallacies, and we're going to be focusing on fallacies of irrelevance and ineffective rebuttals today. So this is our Defense Against the Dark Arts, Part 1. I call it Defense Against the Dark Arts because fallacies are like spells that delude in fantasy books. They make things appear to be what they are not. In particular, it makes bad reasoning appear to be the better reasoning. A fallacy is a defect in an argument that consists in something other than merely false premises. There's two types of defects. You can have formal defects. Formal fallacies are defective because of the arrangement or structure of the argument itself. And informal fallacies are defective because of something wrong with the content of the argument, rather than merely exhibiting poor structure. We're using T. Edward Dahmer's analysis of fallacy. And so we're going to look at it this way. We're going to look at irrelevant premises, unacceptable premises, ones that offer insufficient evidence, and ineffective rebuttals. This is the list of informal fallacies that we'll go over in this lecture and in the next lecture. We're going to focus on this lecture on irrelevance, so the ones that start with appeal to force and end with appeal to unqualified authority. The next lecture will do the insufficiency and unacceptability arguments, fallacies, sorry. So fallacies of relevance, these are when the premises are logically irrelevant to the conclusion. A premise is irrelevant if its acceptance has no bearing on, provides no evidence for, or makes no difference to the truth or falsity of the conclusion. Again, we're really trying to, when making good reasoning, have truth preservation in inference, so that if the premises are true, the conclusion is true necessarily if deductive, probabilistically if inductive. If you want to look at the subject phrase of each claim, look to make sure that they stay on subject during the argument, and if they stray, look to see if they make premises that are irrelevant. So ask yourself in the argument, for each premise, is it still on topic in support of the conclusion? So why is identifying fallacies important? Well, we're going to take Dahmer's position here. I'm going to say it's actually morally important, as well as epistemically. The responsibility of believing and reasoning well rests on the audience or the reasoner, as Dahmer puts it. If you allow yourself to be overcome by the force of an emotional appeal, you are no less guilty of fallacious reasoning than the person who presents the fallacy. If it helps to think of it this way. Often we blame only the liar who tells the lie. In this case, the person who believes it has responsibility concerned with knowledge, which we call epistemic responsibility. And so therefore, the person who believes the lie is also somewhat guilty of the transgression. I know this sounds like blaming the victim, but they're trying to hold you accountable for what you believe and what you hold to be the case. Okay, so I want you to do a couple of active reflection exercises to get into really thinking about the primary reasons that people get distracted with these irrelevant appeals. So ask yourself, which are the most fundamental emotions and drives that motivate people to accept conclusions in place of reasons that offer evidence? How do ads, rhetorical speeches, propaganda, and other persuasive items associate one's values, preferences, hobbies, or cherished traditions with unrelated psychological motivations, ideals, concepts, decisions, or products? What sales techniques involuntarily prompt you to act? Do any of these that I'm going to list below work on you? Or are you inured to this involuntary reaction to sales techniques? What basic human emotion is being manipulated with these? First, scarcity. Somebody might buy a product because many people have already purchased it and only a few remain. Next, loss aversion. Somebody might not buy it except they fear missing out. Reciprocity. You might buy a product because your salesperson gave you their time, gave you a free gift. These are all ways that work on our natural human cognitive biases. Now we're going to talk about the content of arguments. So first, you could have a irrelevant emotional appeal. So the very first fallacy we'll go over is called appeal to force, or technically it's called argumentum ad baculum, which means appeal to the stick. In this, an arguer implies or states that some harm will occur if the audience does not accept the conclusion. This is meant to activate the emotion of fear in the audience, to get them to accept the conclusion because they feel fear instead of because there's good reasons. So here's an example, twin one. If you don't agree with me that mom should buy us a PS5, I will tell her that you got in trouble at school today. Twin two, and if you agree with me that we should get a new PC instead, I'll let go of your hair right now. So twin one is using psychological force, and twin two is using, it seems, physical force. Instead of either offering info about why one should purchase a PS5 or a new PC instead. Next is argumentum ad populum, or argument to the people. This uses the desire for social acceptance to get the listener to accept a conclusion. This activates the very human desire for belonging. Humans are by nature social animals. They desire to identify with a group and desire to be identified socially as belonging to that group. Some even want to feel superior to other groups. So they want to be honored by others, as well as identified as member of a group by others, or identified as belonging by members of a group, or even simply, really at the base level, be identified as belonging to humanity. So I want to get you to practice exercising your learning. So match the type of ad populum to the level on the table. The level is honored, identified as a member of a group, identified as belonging to humans. Bandwagon. In this ad populum, they try to appeal to a type of belonging here, and you'll decide which kind. They say everyone is doing it, so you should do it as well. Next is appeal to superiority. I'll use a old Lexus commercial. The select few select Lexus. So here, the select few do so should you, is the idea. So in that one, it appeals to being a member of the elite in particular. Appeal to tradition. It's always been done this way, should be done this way. As again, no true Scotsman, a real patriot would do it this way, so should you. The next is appeal to pity, also called argumentum ad misericordium. This one is when the arguer attempts to support a conclusion by merely evoking pity from the listener. In this case, it's trying to activate feelings of sympathy or fellow feeling. I'm going to read you a quote from a famous trial. In this case, the guy is it's a defense attorney, is trying to appeal to pity, talking about the person who's on trial for, by the way, a capital crime. And again, this is defense. And he's going to talk about the person on trial's father. So here it goes. Here is Leopold's father. And this boy was the pride of his life. He watched him, he cared for him, he worked for him. It is a hard thing for a father to see his life's hopes crumble into dust. Should he be considered? Should his brothers be considered? Will it do society any good or make your life safer that this boy, their kin, died upon the scaffold? Next is guilt by association. And this one, it points out that the opposing view is held by those with negative esteem instead of presenting evidence for one's position. So this is an argument I found on the internet, and it's in favor of, or it's against being a vegetarian. So that's the conclusion is don't be a vegetarian. Quote, I could go on like this naming mass murderers who are also vegetarians, but I can't quit without including the most hated man in history who was responsible for millions of deaths. Yes, there can be no denying that Adolf Hitler was vegetarian. Yet you don't hear PETA brag about that fact in any of their advertising and promotion. Okay, so guilt by association with, in this case, the most hated man in history. Next, we're going to talk about ineffective rebuttals. We're going to start with very common one that is used to activate anger in the person who they're rebutting. And that is an argumentum ad hominem, in particular, abusive. And ad hominem in general is when you have to have at least two people making an argument. You have to have somebody that's being rebutted, okay? So an arguer responds to an argument by directing his attention not at the arguer's argument, but at the arguer himself, at his character, at his life, at his motivations, sometimes even using negative language. So the idea is if the person is really making a rational discussion, then they're going to stick with arguing against an argument. They're not going to try to attack the arguer. So the argumentum ad hominem abusive, the rebuttal ridicules or insults the arguer's character. One example, why didn't Hillary Clinton announce that she was inappropriately given the debate questions? She secretly used them, crooked Hillary. Next one is an argumentum ad hominem to quoque. In this one, an arguer presents the other arguer as a hypocrite. For example, my cardiologist just told me smoking will exacerbate my present heart condition, so I should quit smoking. But he was smoking a pipe in his office as he is lecturing me about smoking, so I can safely ignore his advice. Last one is argumentum ad hominem circumstantial. In this one, the arguer presents the other arguer as predisposed to argue this way. For example, Chesapeake Bay Foundation advocates spending state money on riparian buffers, but they are just hoping to get grant money somehow out of it. Therefore, we should not take this too seriously. Sorry about floundering there. Next is a straw man fallacy. This one may be familiar to you. To straw man is to misrepresent your opponent's argument and then attack that distorted argument, concluding that the opponent's real argument has been rebutted. Okay, this activates willful ignorance. So in this case, the misrepresentation is what you attack. So you first have to misrepresent. So look for a misrepresentation of another opponent's argument before an attack. So here's an example. Johnson argued for increased aid for persons who are disabled. Why do Dems always advocate socialism? Socialism defeats initiative, takes away promised rewards, and creates big government. It is no good. Next is a red herring. This is committed when the arguer diverts the attention of the listener by changing the subject to a different topic that appears related initially. This activates our response for distraction. For this one, look for the topic to be subtly changed, whereas with a straw man, it's going to mention the other's argument. The red herring is just going to maybe mention at the beginning, maybe even seem to agree, but then just drag the topic tangentially away. Environmentalists try to get you to care about how human behavior affects animals in their local habitat. It's true that one should focus on local habitat. It's hard to get people to mow their own lawns or pay for big beautifying projects at our local parks. Local matters, you know, shop local. Next is a irrelevant appeal, in this case, appeal to unqualified authority. An argument from authority in which the authority lacks credibility or expertise. Look for this basic form, which is the form of an argument from authority, which X says, states, holds, argues, concludes, whatever. P, therefore P. So the whole grounds for why you believe the conclusion P is that a authority says it is so. Now, a qualified authority has training, education, accreditation, certifications, skills, degrees, years of experience in their field. They have been or would be recognized by other experts for their work, okay? So anyone who does not have training, education, accreditation, certification, skills, degrees, and years of experience in their field would not be a qualified authority in that field. People who are just giving, say, basic eyewitness testimony and not under the influence of anything or don't have basic cognitive or perceptual problems would be considered good authorities, okay? So experts and cognizant people, good authorities for either expert testimony or, say, eyewitness or common testimony. Anyone else is an unqualified authority. So specifically, what constitutes an unqualified authority is the authority's unrepresentative expert opinion. The authority is not disinterested. The authority cited is not an expert in that field. Sometimes they'll be an expert in an unrelated field. The given field has wide disagreements between experts, so we can't say any expert opinion is worthy of that strong a conclusion. For witness or personal testimony, the expert may lack the necessary ability to recall or perceive a situation. And finally, any unidentified expert would be when someone says, people say, or I read it that this, I can't remember who, but you know, any unidentified source. We're going to go through this, and it's going to take a little bit because it continues on the next page, but I want you to just figure out how many of the ways of those 6 ways soon is an unqualified authority on climate change. Politicians wanting to block legislation on climate change often refer to Wayhawk Soon. Dr. Soon's work has been tied to funding he received from corporate interests. He's accepted more than $1.2 million in money from the fossil fuel industry over the last decade, while failing to disclose that conflict of interest in most of his scientific papers. At least 11 papers he has published since 2008 omitted such a disclosure, and in at least 8 of those cases, he appears to have violated ethical guidelines of the journals that published. So often described on conservative news programs as a Harvard astrophysicist, Dr. Soon is not an astrophysicist, and he has never been employed by Harvard. He's a part-time employee of the Smithsonian Institute with a doctoral degree in aerospace engineering. Though he has little formal training in climatology, Dr. Soon has for years published papers trying to show that variations in the sun's energies can explain most recent global warming. His thesis is that human activity has played a relatively small role in causing climate change. Okay, so if you need to go back over the slides or go back over the video and see how many ways of these 6 ways, unrepresentative, not disinterested, not an expert in the field, wide disagreement, witness or personal testimony, or unidentified expert, which of these ways soon is unqualified? Okay, next, which type of fallacy of relevance does the caller make? Rush Limbaugh has argued that the country would be a better place if anyone who remained married to their first spouse, and if people participated in the activities of religious organizations. One day a caller said, Why should I believe anything you say? Between you and your wife, you've been married 6 times. You talk about virtues of participating in religious organizations, but you yourself don't do so. You're a hypocrite. Limbaugh's reply was, and what does that have to do with my arguments? So which type of fallacy does the caller make? Which type of fallacy is committed by Dobson? Okay, at a conference, the Surgeon General argued that scientific evidence indicates that abstinence is the only completely safe way to avoid acquiring AIDS sexually. Except for mutually faithful monogamous relationships with uninfected partners, the use of a condom is the best method of reducing or preventing HIV infection. James Dobson said, quote, not one of 800 sexologists at a recent conference raised a hand when asked if they would trust a thin rubber sheath to protect them during intercourse with a known HIV-infected person. Yet they are perfectly willing to tell our kids that safe sex is within reach and that they can sleep around with impunity. So which type of fallacy did Dobson make there? Okay, here's a bunch more. Colton just got fired, then dumped, then kicked out of his apartment. Since you have a free room and a warm heart, you should let it to Colton. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad said that at the UN that there are no homosexuals in Iran. There must be no LGBTQ people in Iran, just as he says. Everyone, and Elon Musk, is buying Dogecoin. You should too. I guess we can all agree that we should hire Jane as the lead. Since it's my money behind this venture and no one wants to see this project stop, she is correct for that role. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy is not worth the paper it's printed on. Nietzsche was an immoral reprobate who went completely insane from syphilis before he died. Next, the university's ecology department have accused dry cleaners of polluting in the paper today. I want to point out that the paper in the university contribute to more pollution than dry cleaners. Their complaints seem disingenuous and should be ignored. Next, the study argued that a major reason for the high illiteracy rate is the many hours of screen time. Yet many of today's TV and YouTube content explore important issues and generate worldwide conversations. Screen time can be beneficial. Harry should not be thrown out for cheating again. If he is thrown out, he will lose his sports scholarship and may never finish college, and he is the first in his family to go. Next, media host Howard Stern cites over 1,000 reasons why George W. Bush is doing a rotten job as president. But Stern is nothing but a vulgar, smut-mouthed freak who will say anything for shock value. Nobody should listen to him. The Republican candidate has argued that government should lift some restrictions on free trade. Obviously, she wants to abolish government altogether. Yet without government, there would be no defense, no justice, no prosperity. None of us want to forgo those benefits. Her reasoning is absurd. The Japanese argue that our import restrictions on steel, autos, and textiles are protectionist and threaten a trade war. What hypocrisy! The Japanese use hundreds of covert schemes to block the import of dozens of products. This administration is not anti-German, as it has been alleged. Germany is a great country. It has contributed immensely to the world's artistic treasury. You should visit the country. Representative Hunt's arguments in favor of health care for the poor and aged should be ignored. He supports this only to get his name in the newspapers. The conclusion he offers, the city should convert to solar, puts him with that idiot kid Thunberg and her UN friends. Don't accept his solar program. Okay, there's a couple of links here for some videos. I'm going to see if I can link them on my video. If I can't, then watch these on your own and I figure out first which type of identity, group identity, does the first YouTube video appeal to? If irrelevant, which type of fallacy is in the second one? And which type of fallacy is the few, the prouds, the Marines commercial? There is one last one as well. Which type of fallacy is this? Stephanopoulos says that claim of election fraud is groundless. Isn't it irresponsible for the president-elect to make false statements like that? Conway replies, I think it's groundless. Talk about the fake news. Fake news is that somehow the popular vote is more important than the electoral college vote now. Well, you can click on this and watch this as well. And these were the objectives that we went over for this class.